every time you say you're from Marshall, Texas, you just say I'm from a small town in Marshall, Texas. You never put the farm in there. That's like a really important detail. I think we're going to have to really unpack this at a later time because
We should interview a black farmer, and I'll be happy to give that to that black farmer with sharing stories of farm life.
Until that time, you're listening to the Dap Project. I am Rhonda Elizabeth, born and raised in the city of Washington, D.C.
And I am Aaron Stallworth. What you know about them Texas boys. Shout out to UGK.
We are not recording this podcast on a farm. We are the Dap Project. It is a podcast that explores culture and politics through Dap.
But we have conversation with black men and others from around the way and ask them about one unifying element about being black men, Dap, including Dap on farms. Who taught you? Was it the cool ass uncle?
Okay, but for real, as we emerge from a disastrous presidency into a presidency with promise, what we're going to see, we're still figuring it out, a period of racial reckoning we are emerging from, and a global pandemic. Shout out to everyone who's gotten their vax. We're exploring what it means to come back better. How can we use our radical imagination to envision and create the world we deserve?
We are talking with folks who are doing the work. Rhonda, we're talking about our recent ads to our respective art collections during this pandemic. You got a nice piece by your fellow native Washingtonian, Elizabeth Catlett, and me and Danielle picked up a piece from our favorite artist, a fellow Texan, Mr. Dap Martin. As we were talking about art and whatnot, this conversation got me to thinking about preserving history, and it brought me to my news for the week. The National Museum of African American History and Culture, often referred to as the Blacksonian, or our museum, or simply the museum, whichever name you have assigned to this wonderful representation of the diaspora, the NMAAHC, is approaching its 5th year of existence in our nation's capital. Living in DC has granted me the privilege of visiting several times. The first time with my dad, Jeremiah, and most recently with a group of 4th graders. It's an amazing museum that has captured the mightiness of Black people and our ongoing struggle with getting America to see us as the beautiful, dope, and amazing humans that we are. Also, of course, it captures our brilliance in art, academia, agriculture, and all fields of American life. The museum recently appointed a new director, Mr. Kevin Young, who is filling the honorable shoes of the founding director, Lonnie Bunch. Mr. Young, or Kevin, began his new role during the pandemic and around the heights of the Black Lives Matter movement after the murder of George Floyd. Kevin attended the church of historical figure Linda Brown, notably from the landmark Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education. Kevin stated in a recent Time magazine article that Linda Brown played piano and sang beautifully on Sunday mornings at the church he also attends, St. Mark's African Episcopal Church. In honor of Linda Brown, who died in March of 2018, Kevin plans to have a pew from that church added to the historic exhibits at the Blacksonian. This latest ad, in addition to the exhibition on Reconstruction that the museum will produce, speaks to the ongoing work that the Blacksonian is doing to share the journey of Black people in America. The Reconstruction piece is a particular standout. In a recent interview, Mr. Young reflects on this, saying, Reconstruction thinks about questions of power, questions of who can vote, politics, but also this long history and the struggle of representation. And a lot of those questions are still with us. And one of the exciting things about the show is going to be thinking about its legacies and connecting Reconstruction to present-day struggles and present-day issues. This museum and its growth and development are so important to our culture and history as Americans. The contributions of Black folks to this country are vast and impossible to quantify. As the country receives their vaccinations and the pandemic subsides, allowing our wonderful museums around the country and world to reopen, let's come back together, not back to normal. Let's visit again and take a friend or family member along with you, honoring our incredible history as Black people.
My news is about a 5-letter word. Please allow me to set a little context first. Last week, I engaged in a spirited debate with a friend on social media about the headline of an article in the Tennessean. Here's the title: record-breaking sales for Uncle Nearest whiskey, named for a slave who mentored Jack Daniel. Now, we served Uncle Nearest on the night of our very first interview for the Dap Project, and I celebrate the success of this women-owned, women-led, Black woman-owned whiskey business. It's all of that. What sparked the discussion was the use of the word slave to describe Nearest Green, the expert distiller. To me, the word slave reduces Green to his condition of involuntary, lifelong servitude. The word removes his humanity, creates emotional distance between the enslaver and the enslaved, and allows the brutality of the institution of slavery to survive long after the practice has been abolished. This is what I think of each time I hear the word slave to describe a person. Historically, the word slave is also incredibly important in the pursuit of full citizenship for Black people. Remember, the Dred Scott decision of 1857 confirmed that slaves were property, not citizens with rights to stand before the court and petition for anything, including their own freedom. So when we say slave, we're really referring to property. The question of maintaining the institution of slavery, of keeping living, breathing people as property, was resolved with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, known as the Civil War Amendments. If this is sounding not too familiar, no worries. Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th and Will Smith's series Amend are excellent resources to deepen our understanding of these crucial amendments to the Constitution. So, where's the actual news? This is the news. The online website dictionary.com will no longer use the word slave to describe people, such as Harriet Tubman, a slave. I suggest that we also amend our language. When we see our ancestors on the other side of this life, we will see people. I believe that is how we should speak of them. And that's that on that, my friends. Thank you for this moment of the news.
My name is Tongo Eisen-Martin, poet, unsuccessful revolutionary. Ready to go another round.
Okay, folks, let me introduce our guest for this week. We are talking, laughing, learning this week with poet, educator, and movement worker, Tongo Eisen-Martin. At the Dap Project, we believe the personal is political and the personal influences the political. This conversation with Tongo beautifully exemplifies these dynamics. Born into a community steeped in the work of Black liberation, he's always known Dap, which is to say, he's always known the struggle for and the celebration of dignity and pride. I crossed paths with Tongo for a minute when we were both undergrads at Columbia University. Shout out to the Columbia Lions. Tongo's published books of poetry include Someone's Dead Already and Heaven is All Goodbyes, which won the American Book Award in 2018. He is currently the Poet Laureate of San Francisco. This episode of the Dap Project is made possible by our friend, fellow Columbia Lion, Antonio Garcia. Thanks, Tone, for putting us in touch with Tongo and kicking off this extraordinary conversation.
Tell us, what is your first memory of Dap?
Man, I don't think I remember a time without Dap. And further, I don't really remember a time without, like, innovating Dap being like, activity. I remember in elementary school, it was a group of us men that would come up with all kind of little kind of little code styles, and there's always a conspiracy going, and the, and the conspiracy was solidified, by the Dap. Dap almost would be like a Morse code, and in fact, if you like talk to different OGs, they literally like there would be words that correspond with the various, with every tap. I think a looming kind of revolt underneath it, if I may romanticize. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I think that's like right in that pocket. There's actually kind of a like, so you just let me know what you want to do, type of agreement. You know what I mean? Even down to a head nod. You can kind of put a head nod into that species of communication. Yeah, I mean, there's some man. I mean, cats. I know some cats that even kind of dance with it. It's almost. Almost popping locked it, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of just express what express what wave you're on, at the time, man. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of like interesting front line of interaction, human interaction.
You grew up in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay. For a Texan, and maybe for a Washingtonian, when I think of Black culture on the West Coast, the Bay Area, I always think of Oakland. But can you tell me some? Get us hip.
Interview over.
I'm asking you, get us hip, brother. Get us hip.
First of all, anytime you see a picture of Billie Holiday in California, she probably in San Francisco. We got this neighborhood in San Francisco called Fillmore, the Fillmore district, which was literally called the Harlem of the West.
Mm-hmm.
Black San Francisco, so sick. Didn't you watch the? Hold on, brother. Did you not watch the James Baldwin documentary when he came to kick it with the sisters and brothers or the siblings in San Francisco? Man, let the OGs tell it. Sisters and brothers and siblings would slide up from LA to San Francisco for the weekend.
Yeah.
So it was like, man, we got some like strong Black neighborhoods that really have almost a natural kind of nationalism to them from day one. And we have other neighborhoods too of serious reputation. So all that to say, like, San Francisco always been an apartheid city, and so it's like not only do we have the so-called Black population, we had we had like serious like independent, cohesive, and also like Emory Douglas. Emory Douglas was one of the original Black Panthers. He did all the art, you know what I mean? Like, he's from San Francisco though, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the kind of like the Bay Area Panther continuum ran through San Francisco just as San Francisco's the one that had the riot in the 60s. We did the Watts thing, They ain't do that, no. We did. And also what also I think what was kind of groovy about the Bay is it's actually even better than San Francisco and Oakland. You also have Richmond. You also have Vallejo. You have all of these kind of like smaller cities that we all run through, everybody, there's a lot of family ties, there's a lot of friendships, there's a lot of people moving, there's this little internal diaspora, so it's just like, it's actually, I don't know what the official count, but there's millions or at least
Yeah.
1 million Black people in the Bay Area, you know, and
Yeah.
that all belong to the same kind of belong to the same solar system.
Can you tell us a little bit about finding your voice as a poet?
Oh man, you know, you can't get around the need to just write a lot. It's almost like, you know, craft is almost a human of its own that just requires, you know, that grows, and it grows according really to how much time you put in the pad. You know, in some ways I did get lucky having, you know, a political really upbringing, or revolutionary upbringing, along with being from such an interesting place culturally, where there's kind of an interesting, almost intellectualism, almost to everything. What's funny is it's like, you know, this kind of philosophical bend to my personality actually is not from a school. It's from, you know, this is the conversations we have in cars, you know, this is like, you know, this is the conversations we have. This is almost the rhythm of conversation we had on the back of the bus, you know. And so it's easy to kind of like to plant some flowers on top of, you know, that dirt. But it does, like, it is a kind of a straightforward equation of just like, you know, really just getting to know yourself. The more you get to know yourself, I mean, through the page, get to know yourself as a poet. What's making you tick? What, you know, what is the difference between a sentence you just said and a line that's actually some poetry? Like that kind of almost like internal conversation is what produces you know, your personal altitude. And I really did take kind of leaps and bounds stylistically every time that I just, you know, went with some kind of hermitage, you know.
Yeah. How long into writing poetry did you find confidence to speak it and share it? Or was it always a
You
thing?
know, I don't know if it was confidence, more just like kind of a weird luck or an insanity of sorts.
That's
You
poetic
know?
in and of itself, and
Right.
insanity of
You
sorts.
know, because I'm really not like I'm really not like actually a super confident person, and definitely wasn't a super confident person. I think I was just things were just a little more dreamlike to me. I experienced reality in a kind of a dreamlike way. I was never really impressed by or inhibited by institutions or strata or any, you know, any type of superstructure. Partly in the way I was raised, you know, we were raised to not respect. You know what I mean?
Wait. How did that play out at home? I'm so curious about that. How did your mom communicate that to you, that it was kind of okay?
Well, never underestimate good old fashioned like propaganda, you know. Don't underestimate censorship, you know. Like I remember, man, when moms lied to us and told myself and my brother that PBS was the only channel on. Like I didn't know that there were TV channels, you know, until like, you know, we got deeper in school, and then kids was coming like, did you see Inspector Gadget yesterday? And like, what the hell is Inspector Gadget? You know, moms would really read it. You know, bedtime reading was really the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Oh my goodness, are you serious?
Facts. You know, facts.
Yeah.
Hey, and it didn't give me nightmares. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, it gave me nightmares, man. What's that puppet, man, on Mr. Rogers with the nose? Like, something. She used
I
to
could.
chase me around my dreams, man. That was the nightmare, man. Malcolm X, I was,
Yeah.
you know, here's another tidbit, like, yes, you can watch this movie, but after it's over, you have to write me a paragraph on everything that was racist in it,
I love
you know.
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do too.
and then also, kind of, they lost, they really lost, they lost their part of the war, but a lot remained, and so there was still like, there was still kind of a church to be raised in, like that's how I noticed, like how some people really raised in the church, like all church functions and all the, all of its processes. Like I was really like, when I had to go to all the little stray protests, or even though they moved to like single issue protests and this type of thing, I had to go to the meetings. I had to, there were still efforts going on. I had to stuff envelopes, and then too is, and then, it's like they, there were also kind of improvised villages that kind of the survivors put together, and so, they kept us, like I'm in the Western Addition Cultural Center after school, I'm you know, we got the the all black soccer team, like, it was just like there was like mothers who just said, "Nah, we're gonna determine, we're gonna determine our kids' reality." Also, man, she just always asked me a whole lot of questions and was constantly asking me to deconstruct what I was looking at. And so just it gave me like that's my engagement of reality, to pick it apart and figure out what's going on and look for bigger pictures and this type of thing. So it's interesting, like in a way, like there wasn't a child's place when it came to a political opinion or a social opinion. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? And in that, and there was I think a confidence there that probably is what hitched the ride with the poetry, that I always had like respect for my analysis.
So your poetry, let's say from going to New York back in your college days to your poetry in the last couple of months, is your process the same? And you're just still reflecting on what's going on in the day, or has your process totally changed?
So it had to have changed. I mean, I'm writing so much better,
All right.
I mean, I had something for that time. I had something for an 18-year-old. I had something for a 19-year-old, but nothing like the bag I got now.
Flex, Tongo. I know you better flex. Poet laureate.
Hey, I'm in the. I've been really wandered into history books.
I know that's right.
Hey, the world is playing along. I think like actually like nah, like my preoccupations haven't really changed. My anxieties haven't really changed, just like my obsessions haven't really changed. I think it's just kind of my relationship to reality has just gotten healthier and healthier, and just over time the musicianship has improved.
Tell us a little bit more about the relationship to reality.
Well, man, at an early as sharp as I like to think I was, I mean, especially coming out of, just the ultra violent 80s and 90s and the ultra hegemonic 80s and 90s, like I very much was just kind of bouncing, defense to defense. I'm just kind of ping ponging off of both myself and the little storms inside my head and also the world, I'm like, I didn't have, I didn't have kind of an intentional ground, you know. I mean, no matter how strong that immune system is of like kind of a revolutionary or radical upbringing, um, you know, that still doesn't, that doesn't guarantee you internal peace, you know. And it's kind of operating or understanding like, no, that's the place to operate from, actually from a place of actually interestingly from a non-aggression. And I say interestingly because my poetry is actually a full sonic force, you know what I mean? But on the but paradoxically, you know, actually when I'm writing, man, I'm super cool, man. I'm super like, you know, I'm not even kind of like dealing with emotion as much as kind of playing with the energy of it or minding the energy of it more than just kind of the swirl of storylines that it might induce. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, both traumatized and part of this compounded trauma and, you know, just, I mean, and all the rest of this kind of these insane social contradictions, um, it's I was just lucky to kind of like to make it out of there with some poems to show for it. Um, you know, yeah, that's kind of what I mean. And it's interesting how you just a little bit take you just take you know, just a little bit more kind of cultivation of internal peace. It gives you a little bit more breathing room, kind of like moment to moment, you know, idea to idea, and just that little bit of space opens things up kind of exponentially. And that's gone a long way with the development of the craft because it's very much like, you know, it's just like a thought jumps up and you just tinker with it, you know.
I think people are really curious about a poet's process because it seems like you take the literal and then you transform it into something, you know, so vivid. And there are a couple lines that stood out to Aaron and I as we were reading through your poetry. But let's just start there with like, how does your mind work to go from what you see to a poem on the page?
You know, it works amazingly.
And if there's ever some assistance that you give your you know, it's all good. You know, we're students. So whatever tools you suggest that we need, you know, for the creative process.
I got, have you heard the good news? You know, I got, you know, if, how, you know, how it's tricky because there's something improvisational about it. I mean, you can sit there and write. I write very slow. You know, I write like 2-3 words at a time, 4 or 5. You know, like it really moves slow through the construction of an image or, you know, a statement. But at a certain point, something has to come out of nowhere. You know, like you don't actually like where a thought is actually constructed is not detectable. So I'm, you know, so if I'm sitting here, it's almost a meditation. It's just I'm sitting here waiting for something to jump up. You know, once it jumps up, I kind of hold it, and I, you know, now, but part of a kind of a beautiful period where I was kind of like I just didn't know where I was going. I just knew what I didn't want to do anymore on the page. And this kind of new species of poem just kind of just man made itself available. So it's kind of like that line comes from a leaps and bounds period of just like kind of improvement. And I think, you know, it is definitely kind of there was I made a commitment to kind of an internal cultivation or spiritual cultivation. You could look at it as along with moving outside, you know, because I was just a teacher for a long time. as well. And I kind of got to the end of that road, and that I was just like, everything I do, they just absorb it. All of my efforts, the institution still wins at the end of the day. And so I took the gloves off and actually like went down to Mississippi for a couple of years doing some organizing work around that period. That line was born of a groovy, a really healthy time for me. I have lines similar to that I know what I'm doing, but I do like conversing with these ideas from a more from a type of position of freedom. I do like to engage these engage kind of like the spiritual commons, you know. And you know where I think where the poem goes is just a voice that's trying to just get you to relax, you know, and to relax into a deeper power that you have access to. You know, often like with oppression, there's really no A to B, man. Like we're really it's really a soup. And even these cats might have a kind of a chronology to their success, or feel like, oh, I had this, now I got more, and all of this type of thing. But I think we really not in tune with how things actually, how reality really can evolve and transform. And so it's just like, well, the first step in that path towards any kind of transformation is an awareness. And I think the first step of that awareness is actually a relaxation. So, like how the poem concludes, like, unclench your fist and walk away. There might be heaven if you understand the nature of the world, Do not recreate the earth outside. Do not tell jokes to yourself. Do not talk disrespectfully to the four walls. Instead, unclench your fists and walk away. There might be heaven if you understand the nature of this world. That's kind of like the journey, the journey of the poem. I just try to, man, it's weird, man. In a poem, man, we kind of just taking pot shots, It's like very irresponsible, but at the same time, but somehow something works. Like so it's the concept is almost like you can actually, in a way, it's almost like what the poet is advocating is actually that you trust your mind. That you actually don't need the whole kind of like map in your head. You don't need your life actually mapped out. Just engage reality from a kind of like a healthier place. And all of these, all of these codifications actually are saying the same thing.
That's a whole word right there.
Yes, it is. So after this past summer, we're kind of at a fork in the road with this trial of Derek Chauvin for the killing of George Floyd. As a poet, how does your poetic voice differ, or how will it differ based on the verdict that we get? If it's guilty or not guilty, how would that affect the voice that you bring to the table?
And it probably won't. As long as the more principal contradictions remain unchanged, I don't, some kind of victory here or there doesn't really fundamentally alter reality, But the good news is, man, it's just like I'll be happy to change. My voice will change when the world truly changes.
Yeah.
I really go with what's there. What's crucial though for what kind of cultural workers can do right now is really put their efforts towards consciousness raising, because I think like what that's been a missing ingredient through these last 10 plus years of organizing. We have like action, right? and we have people who are like have become really good at actions, and we've seen some really impressive you know, mass kind of moments. But it's still, you know, it's a resistance still populated by almost a wishy-washy consciousness. Lightweight want to have his cake and eat it too. Like, you know, want to have a little bit of the new day, some of the old, you know what I mean? Like, still want to define yourself actually through hegemony. Societies wander together like drops of virus. Citizen testaments been on offer me a nation of breadwinners to hold me back like his brinks. I wrangle the concrete sometimes like flesh. My Martin Luther King permanence turned away from a podium into the reeds like God is the dangerous twin. Black August to the mountaintop, balcony on my bedroom floor. You know, they steal you from the earth itself and suspend you in your broken neck from their foolish euphoria, from the loyalty oath of their great superstitions, loyalty oath of their agrarian reform. I return to my mother completely disrespected. So peeling the heat off of purgatory, they kill poets like me. Walk me away from my poems, never to be heard from again in this foul industrial complex of bloodlines picked through a sport and spiritual death. You know, your devil at least half-made police become a pretty word. I'm reading a lynch mob shoestrings like they were.
It was interesting to see that you spent some time in Jackson, Mississippi. We know the South is where grandparents and great-grandparents migrated from, to places like San Francisco, Chicago, DC, etc. How did spending time in Jackson shape your thoughts on futurism?
So I was down there on that kind of like, you know, on that kind of new Africa theory, you know, like, you know, we got all these overwhelming majorities, you know. Mm-hmm. You know, you can actually get some kind of like, what do they call it? 21st century socialism, 20th century, you know, you can vote some black socialism in, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't think, you know, as long as you have this kind of ruling, like as long as you have this white power structure, it will never be, you know, I don't think any kind of pocket is safe. Anytime the people are actually determining reality, and that's what I loved about my upbringing, or maybe what kind of gave me, you know, you know, supplemented my, gave my lack of confidence, or I don't know exactly how to put it, but just like, you know, a cultural landscape, man, where people are determining reality, you know, people just put together, it's just like, just beautiful, innovative projects and traditions and festivals and all of this type of thing. To me, like, futurism, or kind of like a beautifully imaginative futurism, comes from, you know, comes from people being in charge, and or the people being in charge. And man, when I went to Venezuela for a couple weeks. This was like, Chavez was already dead. This was like right before the opposition, you know, started killing a few people and really launching their thing. In fact, like the last day I was there was like they launched. But one of the things that stood out to me, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a very uneven revolution. Like, it's not like it was everywhere and everybody was feeling the same way, and it was, you know, and it definitely had its contradictions. And in some ways it also like was not that revolutionary in some ways. But man, the most excited people I saw were the artists, were the academics. It was just a different kind of electricity in the air when it's like when power is actually, you know, flowing from at least a mass concept, you know, if not literally the power of the masses, you know. The you know, like the Migos were running children's programs, you know. It's like the elementary school teacher was like the commune representative of 50,000 people, you know. It was just like, you know, and it was just so it was real lively in a way that I just don't see here, you know. And And at this point, I've been around some cold, I've been in some cold spaces, around some cold artists, and no matter how like groovy we are, and powerful things we put together, it's actually we're a lot more inhibited collectively, and kind of pessimistic and always kind of on defense or survival mode or really needing the next come up, you know what I mean? Instead of just like engaging ideas with a confidence that these ideas that we continue to work out will actually become a social reality, man. So it's just like it's almost like the future could be just like that. It just has to be a reorganization of power.
You are San Francisco's poet laureate. Tell us, brother, how does that feel?
It's like, man, you just think you think a lot about the hard times, and just just like just like, wow, the walk you've taken to get from there to that kind of, it's like it is surreal, and there's something about it. No matter how groovy you thought you was the whole time, when something comes to fruition like that, you are like, whoa. That is super trippy, Like I really be driving down the street like, man, I am the poet laureate of this month. The opportunity to make your loved ones proud, is also is more moving. Like it's more moving than you would think. Like it really is like, whoa, when your peoples are, man, calling you up in tears, it's kind of like a beautiful singular graduation. It's like your own personal graduation day, I don't think it's worth keeping the ruling class alive, you know what I mean?
Right.
You mean you'll give it up?
Yeah. We got to get a new Wikipedia definition of laureate, but
right. San Francisco's getting adopted by me now,
Yeah. Right.
Wow. You know what the original poet laureate was, man? I looked it up just because I didn't know.
I did a Wikipedia today myself, but
did you see
it? The 1600s or 1300s?
Right, a poet was adopted by the royal family. That's who the poet laureate was. So if you read between the lines, it's actually technically a poet who is like adopted by the power structure. You know what I mean? And so even when I run around saying like, yeah, I'm poet laureate in San Francisco, that actually reinforces ruling class hegemony in a sneaky way,
But wait a second, the San Francisco though that you're the poet laureate of is very different, as we just talked about, that it has a very different economic setup, it has a different cultural orientation. So that leads me just to wonder, as the poet laureate, are you speaking for, whose voice are you speaking for? Or can you say that you are a voice for the hegemony or the dominant structure? Or are you an outside voice? Or, and this is not to gas you up, but are you like a voice of consciousness or a voice of conscious being, a person who has seen San Francisco through the ages and actually has a very critical view of where the city is now?
And even colder, the question is, in a super hyper gentrified city, how many poets were actually left around to be chosen from?
What was that movie, like The Last Man in the Last
Right, The Last Man in San Francisco.
Oh,
yeah,
that's you, Tongo.
You know, yeah, it's the contradiction. The contradiction is real.
There is something, though, very intentional about your work, and that's the curriculum that you did with your mother and your strong interest in extrajudicial killings. And even the word interest is probably too weak to really carry what seems to be a passion that you have. So if we could talk about that a little bit, where the curriculum came from, and also how that idea embedded itself in your mind that the killing of Black bodies by state-sanctioned killings is not just problematic, but it's a problem that you're taking on with your mother.
Yeah, so you know, my mother was when Trayvon Martin's murder was big. My mother was sitting there like, has anybody actually, you know, done the numbers, you know? Like, and she was like, well, how many actually, like, you know, like let's start researching. I mean, well, I'm going to start researching is what she said to herself. You know?
Wait, you were your mom's TA, essentially. You were her teacher's assistant.
Right.
Man, she put that, you know, she's
a
bad mama jamma.
Right.
You know,
Turn on that PBS and give me some research.
Real, man. And so she just started combing and just compiling all the cases and then analyzing, and then she like really just like started breaking down the demographics of it, like, you know, how many, like what exactly what initiated the police contact, you know, what was the age range, what was the geography, you know, all of these, you know, all of these factors. And she found, and so y'all might have, there was a point, I don't know if it was when it was like around the Ferguson time, but in some of the demonstrations there were signs that said every 28 hours. Mm-hmm. So that came from her. That come from,
okay, from the research.
Yeah. So she found that a Black person was killed once every 28 hours by the police or a vigilante or security guard. And it's actually more, but she kept it academically responsible. So if she couldn't find where, you know, race was explicitly given, she wouldn't count it. But she said you could tell from where they was killed, it was probably somebody Black, you know. So it's probably more, but so conservatively speaking, once every 28 hours, you know. And so what I was tasked to do was write a curriculum to accompany the study. Both can be seen on OperationGhettoStorm.org.
It will be in the show notes.
Right on. And a curriculum to kind of give an ideological framework, you know, just like, okay, well, what produces these facts, and that's how that came about. But really, what the kind of study shows, and I highly recommend people read the CounterRevolution of 1776 by Gerald Horne,
okay,
which makes a beautiful case that, you know, that basically the United States was just the best place to facilitate slavery, the most ideal place to facilitate slavery. And facilitated by kind of diffusing the powder kegs that was the Caribbean by bringing the operations to the United States and adding more space and more white people, you know. And so that whiteness or what whiteness is actually born of and continues to be really is not privilege, but rather a deputization. Is you are now to participate in this perpetual repression of slave revolt. That's actually what's going on here. And so when you look at, like, you know, one of the things that just the study found is, like, there's no sanctuary, there's no region of the United States, there's no size of city in which Black people are more safe. You know, the majority, like, only, man, I'm blanking on the numbers. I should have these. I should be able to rattle them, but it's like a small percent were actually a small percent were actually even involved in a crime when the contact started, and an even smaller actually were threatening a police officer's life. You know, I don't want to make anything up. People should just check it out. But I mean, it's like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, like 40-something% were just profiled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're literally doing nothing. We're just, you know, driving while Black, walking while Black. You know what I mean? This type of thing. And so what is that? You know, that's what does this indicate? It indicates permanent war. It indicates permanent war against non-white people, especially, you know, Black and, you know, First Nations. First Nations
like
people
they were tea
were
leaves teaching you how to write about cities. It's the 25th century in the mirror, people. Tyranny against your chump chains. You're a chump to be disrespected even with a gun in your car. Cupid of needlework, spelled tune for the proletariat, the relapse ministry. Talented people curled up in a fetal position next to a diamond, dying. Just another service day in the theatrics of tea house fascism and a bouquet of surveillance cameras in the poverty of God. New blue eyes, corpses of water, newly potted presidency, or one big shiny coin if you ask an animated capitalist.
In 1964, Nina Simone, the jazz artist and civil rights activist, sang Pirate Jenny, originally from the Three Penny Opera. It is an incredibly haunting song. Pirate Jenny is a maid who is insulted by patrons, but all the while, she kind of smiles, kind of slyly, because she knows the ship, the Black Freighter, is coming in. So in this way, the Black Freighter is a metaphor for the coming revolution. Tongo and his co-founder, Allie Brown, are launching a publishing company with this title and from this tradition, Tongo. Congratulations, Black Freighter Press.
Right on, right on.
Really excited about that. Why now? Why launch a press now?
So we can get our hands on the means of cultural production. You know, I think, like, one of our, you know, just again, kind of like what else kind of makes up our inhibition, you know, as Black cultural workers is, you know, it's never our machinery, you know, or rarely, or our machinery doesn't have the same stamp, you know, which is fine for now. We can take care of that, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just wanted, you know, people put together people structure. You know, actually, what the aspiration is for the press to really be a cooperative, you know, at the minimum, an author cooperative. But I like to see it actually become what they call a consumer cooperative, like actually owned by, you know, this kind of people, whatever neighborhood or a few neighborhoods or city, you know what I mean? Like this kind of collective that actually say what we, you know, determine what we do. And I should say too, shout out to the co-founder, Allie Jones, especially like, why now? Because Allie Jones.
Oh, you mean there's a Black woman behind it?
Yes.
Relate to that.
So your mission includes using art to transform consciousness. And how does that happen?
You know, it kind of happened. Man, like when I figure that all the way out, it's a wrap, you know, because I'm gonna just be consciousness. I'm gonna be a consciousness machine out here, you know, warrior of consciousness, just politicizing cities in one fell swoop. But what there are like some potentials. You know, I asked, I've asked a few OGs, like, you know, especially those that didn't start from like, you know, a revolution, didn't have a revolutionary background, but became, you know, beautiful revolutionaries. I'll ask them, like, you know, what was it? What politicized you? And a few times, more than a few times, somebody said, I heard a poem. It was a poem that just kind of like, snapped me out of the nonsense for a little second. It just sparked like a curiosity or a process, you know what I mean? So you can never underestimate that. But I think also, you know, I think like kind of the cultural work again of just like taking responsibility for the, you know, just for the day in, day out activities of a neighborhood, you know. I mean, because that's again like it was a village that put me together. It was a full immersion, you know, because I went to the little Freedom Elementary School, you know, where, you know, it was, you know, African drumming, not do re mi, you know. It was, you know, like Black history is history. We are the center, and it was you're learning in order to contribute to resistance, in order to contribute to the struggle. This is also what like so you know just kind of where you are. You know, kind of just determines how you define yourself. And so I think that's a crucial place for, you know, just or again, another vote that us cultural workers try to create as much structure as we can, you know.
There's a celebration for the Black Freighter Press release on Thursday, April 29th from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find out more information about this event on the website at blackfreighterpress.com.
A few moments back, we were talking about change, and we were expressing a sentiment that you were waiting for change. But what I think is also happening is that you're driving change as well. So that change is a symbiotic. Political change and cultural change are symbiotic in that the political change can drive one, but the cultural change also envisions the other. So are you a hopeful person? I think creative people are inherently hopeful. That's the nature of creativity.
Sure. Right. Hopeful as hell, you know. You know, and especially, I mean, you know, just because, you know, like we're always, you know, we're always surrounded by transformation. Or one way you could kind of like another lens for like what is creativity, you know, is kind of like, you know, evidence of transformations. I mean, even literally, where I'm just turning a movement in my fingers into a sound coming out of a guitar, you know, turning a blank page into a poem, you know, taking some ink and making it a poem. Like things we're always around change and transformation. So it, you know, it stands to reason that, you know, and you know what else, man, what trips me out? Little kids. Maybe I just been lucky to meet them, but I've met these just little brilliant little 7-year-olds and 10-year-olds and shit. And he's just like, they wouldn't have sent you through here if it was over, you know? and as much madness as we see like in ourselves and in our peoples around us, like who are supposed to know better. You know what I'm saying? It's still like there's still evidence that there is just kind of like brilliance and goodness that will not let up. So yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I'm not bluffing.
What music is bringing you joy these days?
I've been on a Coltrane vortex, you know, and almost I wish I understood more. Like I wish I had more kind of music theory, a grasp of music theory. I just wish I had a better ear to really do right by just listening. It's been Coltrane around here. And I just started listening to Otis Rush, because now the Coltrane fog has to dissipate now. You know, I've been running, it's like it's probably been like over 6 months. I don't know how I just can't get out of here, but I started putting some other stuff in the diet, and I'm really enjoying listening to Otis Rush, the blues player, because it's interesting how he really, you know, you can hear a lot, and I don't know if it's a coincidence, but he really has like a Jimi Hendrix thing going, you know. And of course before, you know, I wonder if Jimi Hendrix pulled from him. But it's interesting to kind of like to hear a kind of a more soaring blues guitar from that though, but like from that time, you know. It's been a treat listening to him.
What do you no longer believe that you believed in 2020?
What do I no longer believe? It's not necessarily a matter of what I no longer believe, but like I did get hit. I got smacked around a little bit, and I saw like how you still, like, even with the best like kind of intentions and you know, all of the groovy warrior of light attributes, like you still be down there making little deals with the devil on the low. You know, that you got, like, there's still like little, you know, and like you still cutting corners down there, and because I just see how I paid for every corner I cut, I paid for, you know. And it's interesting, like, you know, how things kind of just got stripped down.
That sounds like a moment of reckoning, like an internal moment of reckoning.
And how, you know. And so with like getting hit with this, you know, with certain painful things, it gave me more, like I got some good art out of it.
I was going to ask, did you at least get a poem for your troubles?
Yeah. So a whole book. I got a whole book out of it. Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming on the Dap Project. It was awesome.
I know.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good to meet you, brother.
Oh, Tongo, good. All right.
Take care.
Peace.
out.
I love a good interview that cracks me up. It's brilliance, it's self-deprecation.
Yeah, Tongo is a dope, creative, and a true revolutionary. San Francisco is lucky to have him as their poet laureate.
But shout out to Arlene Eisen. In relation to Tongo, she is his mother, but she is also a writer and a scholar, the author of the study Operation Ghetto Storm, as he mentioned. And from the website, you can see the report exposes how every 28 hours, let that sink in, every 28 hours, someone inside the United States, employed or protected by the US government, kills a Black child, woman, or man. You can access this report at operationghettostorm.org. Mothers have a tremendous influence over their children's political orientation. Aaron, I know you know this well, and we can see that here in Tongo's story. So I want to highlight another book that's just come out by Anna Malika Tubbs, which tells the stories of Louise Little, Bernice Baldwin, and Alberta King. These names sound familiar because they are the mothers of Malcolm X, James Baldwin, and Martin Luther King Jr. Her book is called The Three Mothers, and it is fascinating. Highly recommend that you listen both to this episode and her interview with Alicia Garza on Lady Don't Take No, the most recent episode of Lady Don't Take No podcast with Anna Malika Tubbs. Very interesting.
Speaking of Alicia Garza and books, our book club is reading her book, The Purpose of Power. This wonderful book by one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm very excited to continue the book and complete the book. We will be having our second TDP reading book talk coming up on March 28th, Sunday, 5 p.m. on Instagram Live. We hope you will join us. Listen in, join in. We can add 4 people now to Instagram Live, so it may not just be me and you, Rhonda. We can add a couple of folks.
2 more people. But listen, this is the real question, Aaron. So you mentioned that magically you're going to finish reading this book. Are you bottling and selling this magic for anybody else who would like to take a little swig and magically finish their books for their book clubs?
Bottling it and selling it for the free. Just, like or comment on something TDP related. And I will be glad to share my magic.
Is that what it's going to be called? You got a calf named Calf. You got some magic named Magic. I am wilding out. And so on the socials, I tweet randomalia at educate_Rhonda. I post pics of my auntie, sister, biker life, not to be confused with motorbikes, but this is my bicycle life, on Instagram at Rhonda Henderson. And I talk about books a lot at Ruby Reads Chocolate City, also on IG. Aaron Harvey, are you on the socials?
I am definitely on the socials at Aaron.Stallworth. Catch pictures of my daughters on horses. Catch me posting things that I find dope in Black culture and in the world in general. And of course, TDP is also on the socials at the.dap project. Check us out there. That is our favorite place to be, even though we may start getting on Twitter a little bit more. Folks are starting to like us a bit on Twitter.
What?
At Twitter, we are Dap_project, at Dap_project. So check us out there as well.
Where can we find Tongo on the socials?
On the Instagram, I'm _ Tongo Gara _ That's TONGOGARA. And I'm on Twitter too with the same handle, but I'm Twitter got me nervous. I keep it real square in there. You can tap in, but I just post things and I thank people. And blackfreighterpress.com, people can tap in with the website.
Thanks for rocking with us this week and every week. We really appreciate you joining us for all of our insights and shenanigans. Resistance is a highway with many lanes, and I hope you find yours.
Take care, folks.